There we go.
Perfect. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So this SEO Mastery Summit webinar is going to be all around Core Web Vitals, which you obviously have some experience with. I think before we get too far into it, we'll just give people a few minutes to join in and so on. So we can kick off in 4 minutes. I'm just checking that all the channels. Yes. It's good.
Good go.
So before we get going, what have happened at WPX for the last couple of months?
We rolled out a completely new version of our own custom CDN, which is considerably quicker.
Nice.
And to my knowledge, as far as I know, we are the only hosting company with our own custom CDN built exactly for our platform. So we used to use Max CDN back in the day, Key CDN, but the problem with those, Matt, was we didn't have the flexibility to change the platform. So one day over a beer lunch, we just said, wouldn't it be cool if we had our own CDN? And about a year later, we did. And we're working towards full page caching on that system, which is a bit of an elusive thing, not technically that easy, but obviously makes a huge difference on loading performance.
Yep.
Nice. That's the big one. Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been a customer myself for a long time, so it's good to see continuous improvements.
Absolutely, always evolving the platform and very focused on speed, which is very relevant for today's talk.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, I mean, so Google did kind of delay Core Web Vitals a little bit, and I mean, I think they probably had problems figuring it out themselves a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that it's coming, but I think the main thing, at least from a user perspective, is the fact that, it's still improving your website and making it faster and making it more accessible, etc. is always a benefit. So no matter how much value Google puts on it, the benefit of improving your website and making it more accessible is obviously always there, right? So.
Yep, for sure.
So, never a disadvantage doing so.
Yep.
Right, Terry, I can see people have been joining in, and yeah, I think let's kick off the presentation and let's get going. Welcome everyone, and again, I'll just kick off here. So Terry Kyle is the CEO of WPX Hosting, and he's going to talk about Core Web Vitals today, and it's going to be a live stream. So lots of good hints and tips to what you can do to speed up your site and make it better and more accessible. So Terry, I'll hand over to you so you can.
Sure, thank you, Matt. Thank you. Welcome everybody, great to have you here today. At the beginning, I should make it clear that I'm not a technical person. I'm kind of a web entrepreneur like you guys, most likely. I have technical people who work for me, kind of many of them extremely clever, much cleverer than I am, to do that technical stuff. And you might immediately think, oh my God, what have we got this guy on to talk about Core Web Vitals for when he's not a technical dude? What I do bring, though, is kind of at least 10 years of SEO experience, plus a very skeptical mindset of I want proof of things before I necessarily believe them. That actually served me very well in SEO, which I got into around late 2008. I think it was somewhere there. It's a long time ago. But when I did that, just very quickly, because it's relevant here, I kind of studied every single thing I could get my hands on. I went from knowing absolutely nothing about SEO, which I only learned to promote a book that I had self-published and released on Amazon. Not available anymore, so don't go to Amazon. You can't buy it. Sorry about that. It's out of date. So I kind of grabbed every course, every book I could. But from that point on, I actually wanted to test out if what people were saying was accurate. And it's not that I was calling them liars, but I just kind of had that very much that testing mindset, and I wanted to see for myself. So that served me very well. I worked a lot with expired domains over the years, had big like link services and all kinds of things and a lot of software tools. Still have got a couple of those. They're kind of much smaller businesses. My main thing is at WPX. So when the core Web Vitals thing came along, I wanted to look a bit more closely at it, not necessarily from a web developer's point of view, but more from a skeptical SEO's perspective. And what I found, and I wrote about this on the WPX blog, is that Google's own sites did extremely poorly on Google PageSpeed Insight, and they had very poor scores on Core Web Vitals. So if you put in properties like YouTube, for example, which is, I think, depending on the country, but I think it's probably the second most visited website in the world, YouTube, and a site like the Google Play Store, what you see is that they do extremely poorly on Google's own tool, which I find somewhat ironic. And when I pointed that out in relevant Facebook groups, the response is usually, yeah, but they're big brands, so they can get away with, poor scores, and Google owns them, so it doesn't matter. But the point I was trying to make by testing Google's own properties on their own tool, Google PageSpeed Insights, is if you go and test either of those sites, Google Play Store or YouTube, this also applies to apple.com, for example, what you see is from any device in any location, they load instantly. So a poor score on that tool does not relate to poor performance for the end user, which I think is the ultimate goal of that tool and Core Web Vitals. It's all about user experience, of course. So YouTube and Google, Google generally, obviously have a basically unlimited budget to optimize their websites for speed. So when you look at the same deal for Apple, excuse me. So when you have a look at Apple's poor performance or YouTube, which was getting a general score of 35 when I was testing in May for my article, it's a bit different now. I was just testing before this call. When I was testing those, they loaded instantly, but they had all this horrible stuff going on. There were big long lists of corrections that those sites needed to make. And that did not relate at all to, to my experience, what I could test on different devices. So I think when, you see advice like on Pingdom Tools, for example, and I talk about this in my experiences with a lot of WPX customers who will come to support or come to me privately, and they'll say, Terry, I'm worried about my performance grade on Pingdom Tools, for instance, which I think is becoming a bit less relevant as a tool now. People are moving much more to Google PageSpeed Insights, GT metrics since they updated to Lighthouse, that sort of thing. But for example, on Pingdom Tools, if you look at pingdom.com, because the tools is on a subdomain, pingdom.com gets a D grade, ABCD, on their own tool. So, and the money-making business is actually at pingdom.com, not at tools.pingdom.com. So if the performance grade were that important, wouldn't Pingdom either optimize their page to get an A instead of a D on that tool, or just do a software tweak and just tell it to give it an A, even if it wasn't even justified? They might try to do that. So I always like to test tools on themselves and just see how well they do. Having said all of that, I think there are a couple of other issues that come up quite a bit through our support dialogues with customers. So we need to look at a couple of things. First is that Google has said very openly that Core Web Vitals is going to be a ranking factor. And I think the easy kind of misunderstanding to jump to there is that it's going to be the dominant ranking factor, when in fact, Google has over 200 ranking factors. We don't know the exact number. People inside Google do. People inside Google know the exact weighting of those 200 plus ranking factors. We don't. We can test and guess about it. I suspect backlinks still massively important, have been forever. I remember once in a very, very old Matt Cutts interview, he was asked, did Google ever test search results without backlinks? And he said they've done that a lot, and the results were like way worse without taking links into consideration. So backlinks are still a huge factor in Google search rankings. There are obviously other things. So I think with Core Web Vitals coming along, when it's all properly, fully implemented and tweaked and evolved, and we know Google likes to do that a lot, don't assume that's the dominant ranking factor. And don't assume if you suddenly get an amazing Core Web Vitals score that you're going to go from page 3 to number 1, for example. Those other factors are totally going to be taken into account. So, that's a really important thing. And we see less experienced webmasters kind of freaking out when Core Web Vitals came along, or the talk of it, coming in properly. And they could see that they had like a 70 score there, and maybe one of the 3 factors, which we'll talk about shortly, the main ones, was in the red and it wasn't in the green, and thought, oh my God, my rankings are gone. I've invested years in getting to this position in Google. It's all over. I'm finished. That's very, very unlikely to be the case, unless you have some horrifically designed website, from 1999 or whatever, that's got a horrible template and it takes 3 minutes to load, and unoptimized images and all that kind of thing. So I don't think that's a factor. So having said all of that, Mads, I think what is important as webmasters is that we do want to create a great experience for people who visit our website. We know the web is getting more competitive, it's getting more saturated in more niches, sub-niches as well. So you want to give your visitors who you've worked hard for, or you've paid quite a bit of money or SEO time or whatever, you've invested all of that to get people to your website. So obviously you want to give them a really good experience when they come. And I think that's the underlying theme of all of this Core Web Vital stuff. And kind of irrespective of what your score is, even if you have a really, really good score on that Google PageSpeed Insights, you may notice things that are not a great customer experience that you want to change anyway for that. And it isn't necessarily even just about conversions on your website, which is obviously super important. You always want to be paying attention to that. But what is the general customer experience like? What is your navigation like? Have you got tons of pop-ups, which Google is not going to like with the Core Web Vitals as well? So you always want to be mindful of creating a great experience for people who come there. You want to get them back, hopefully. It might take a few goes to get them to convert into customers. So even if Google had said nothing, excuse me, hay fever today, even if Google had said nothing and done nothing about Core Web Vitals in 2020 or 2021, I think as a site owner and web entrepreneur, you should be paying attention to that stuff anyway, and always looking to kind of improve your customer experience. I'll just share a couple of quick insights here, not relevant to Core Web Vitals, but they may be very useful for the guys watching this talk. We have, over the years, we've done a lot of surveying of customers at WPX, and 2 of the most insightful survey questions that you can ask for conversions, I don't think I invented them, but I can't recall exactly where they came from. The first is, what one thing almost stopped you from becoming a customer? Okay, there's Aaron. Aaron's here. What one thing almost stopped you from becoming a customer of whatever the company, so WPX in this case? And you will find out that you should start to see a friction point, something there, maybe not clear in your pricing or delivery. If it's e-commerce, it could be something there that you can fix, and it costs nothing to ask. Though we used to do Amazon book vouchers for those, I think $10 or $20. So that's a great question to ask for conversions. The second question, amongst others, was what one thing did convince you or kind of got you over the psychological line to become customers of WPX? And for us, typically the answer for that is speed. So those are kind of useful questions. And I would really encourage you, regardless of what Google is saying or doing, to always focus on creating a great experience for people coming to your website. Use fast hosting, have well-optimized images, for example. Don't go nuts with pop-ups. Don't necessarily have super long pages because all of the heat map tracking that I've ever seen and done on my website or other people's websites shows that not that many people scroll. And the more you expect them to scroll, you might be quite disappointed, and that's not necessarily the greatest experience. So that's some kind of background context. So if you agree, Mads, I'll jump into now the three specific areas of core web vitals that we need to pay attention to and what we can do about them. You happy with that?
Sounds perfect. Sounds perfect.
Okay, so there are three kind of measures for this, and I'll get into what I think the names are kind of unnecessarily complicated. So we have the first contentful paint measure. We have first input delay, and then we have cumulative layout shift. So with first contentful paint, this is basically a measure of how fast the majority of the page loads for the user. So Google has set a benchmark of 2.5 seconds as a maximum for that, where it's green. If you go above that, it's red. I think you should be doing better than that. And in modern hosting, including WPX, you should be getting more like around 1 second loading on that. But within the Google PageSpeed Insights tool, you'll notice you have a mobile measure and a desktop measure. And one of the traps to be aware of with the mobile measure that Google uses, and you've really got to dig to find this information. They don't put it on the main page. They're taking into account that 50% of people accessing your page are doing so on a 3G phone. This really old Motorola, they named the model number, which I can't recall now. So now, because everything is about the smartphone and mobile, and Google is mobile first, the search results are based on mobile results. It's good to know that the way Google measures it is a bit funny, I think, and somewhat unfair. I don't know that many people in the US, Australia, UK, Canada, for example, still using 3G phones. Is anybody? Are they even available? I'm not sure. So unlike kind of other speed tools and the desktop measure here, Google is now factoring in the hardware that somebody is using to access your site. So it's a little bit like, if you have a black and white TV at home, and I'm old enough to remember what they look like, I'm not ashamed to admit, and the TV channel is broadcasting in HD, but I don't have a black and white TV, so that therefore the TV channel is kind of punished for that because of the hardware of the user. It doesn't seem quite right to me. So this first contentful paint, the one you want to pay attention to is the mobile result, not necessarily desktop, because everything with Google results is on mobile now. First contentful paint, 2.5 seconds. So here, the big things that are going to be affecting, you might have some nasty ad scripts, which are really delaying the page loading. That can be a factor. Unoptimized images, can be a factor as well. Just even the template itself, it could be poorly optimized. It might be quite old, not updated, that kind of thing. Interestingly, when I wrote about this on the WPX blog, I tested an empty default WordPress, and that came in at 100, and basically 100 on desktop and mobile. Mobile was 99, I think. Desktop was 100. So WordPress in itself is not heavy for Google PageSpeed Insights or Core Web Vitals, but it's what we do to the site after that can have an impact. So if I've got 35 holiday photos from the Caribbean and they're not optimized at all and they're massive digital photos, well, Core Web Vitals score is going to get badly impacted by that, of course.
And I think what I see a lot, Terry, is that particularly SEOs, I think is bad at that, but they're all sitting on desktop themselves, right? And they're always designing first on desktop, and then they kind of break it down to mobile. And one of the things that I've definitely seen a lot of benefit from is really just removing a lot more images on mobile.
Yeah.
Because like I'm thinking of it from my own perspective as well. If I'm sitting reading on a mobile and sitting scrolling, if there's an image, I mean, that can be great, but most of the time I'm just trying to scroll by it and get to the next reading piece, right?
Sure.
So I think like from an SEO standpoint, at least so many SEOs are really designing from that they're focused on a desktop view, and I think really trying to design at least a mobile piece really from a mobile point of view, I think makes a huge difference. Right?
You always got to check it. So if you make a change to your site, like you might change template or you throw in a bunch of videos, whatever it is, you've got your smartphone right there on the desk to check how it looks. Is it working or is it just a horrible experience? And everything now I think it's already shifted, but if it isn't, it's still almost completely shifted now to the mobile device. So we kind of get a little bit misled because we're creating the pages on a laptop or a desktop machine. You can't do it on a phone. But the end user is most likely going to be using it on a phone. So I think just having it there always ready, and you can play around with it. You try this template or this effect, on a page builder like Thrive Themes or Elementor or whatever, or Divi. So you can play around with it there, but just check and see how that impacts the user experience, and think about what is the primary purpose of this page. And typically it will be to create value for the reader of that page or the visitor to that page. Are you providing the value, and you're not putting obstacles in the way for them to access the value that you kind of spent a lot on creating? So that's the first contentful paint, and this will always be slower on mobile than desktop in Google PageSpeed Insights because of this 3G factor that Google insists on calculating it with, which I don't think is correct or accurate, but their choice, of course.
I mean, mobile is always a bit funny because even though you have a 4G or even a 5G phone, sometimes reception is crap, right? So
yeah,
sometimes there's some argument for it once in a while, right? But again, majority of users, as you say, will not be in that position, right?
Yeah, they'll be on a Samsung S12. I don't know what the current Samsung one is. Mine's a bit older. Or iPhone 12 is the iPhone 12 the current one? I'm not sure. So you've got some pretty decent hardware there thrown at it. And I think web pages generally, the direction of the web is to make web pages more interactive and more scripts, so you can have Google Tag Manager and Facebook Pixel, Google Analytics. You can have other ad scripts possibly running as well. It depends. And we're kind of throwing a lot more and expecting a lot more of web pages now than just basic text and a few pictures in most cases, I think. So Google is a bit kind of going in the opposite direction on that, but that's their call. So that's that page loading. Let's think about first contentful paint is loading. And the next one we have is first input display. They call it FID, first input display. So think of it this way. If you go to google.com, which is basically one logo and a form field where you're going to type in, though you type it in the browser bar now, they did that a while back. But let's assume the old model of Google. You go there and you want to type into that box. You want to enter some information into a form, a search query or whatever into YouTube. So the FID, that first input display, is measuring how quickly it is before the user can actually start to enter information into a field while all the other stuff of the page is loading. Google says a healthy time is around 100 milliseconds for that. to happen. So if you've got too much going on, that's going to make it harder for the browser to render all of that, put it all together, and a slower time will be involved on that. It's still loading speed, but it's just a different kind of subcategory. And the final one is called, very user-friendly, cumulative layout shift. So let's say, for example, you're on a train or a bus or whatever, and you look up your favorite news site. Bill, shall I fire in an answer, Bill? Now, Matt, on this question? Okay. I think that the question, Bill, is what's the heaviness of the images? Have the images been well optimized? And you can very easily test it out. So if you've got like 95 fishing images, because I can see you like the beach, you might be a fishing guy, that are not optimized, that's obviously super heavy. But if those images are well optimized and the gallery plugin, which is probably how you're doing it, or you might be using a feature in Elementor or Divi or Thrive Themes, one of those page builders, it's good just to test it out with your specific photos and with that particular gallery kind of function. So on the cumulative layout shift there, that CLS, this is how much the web page is kind of moving around. So if I'm on the train and I've gone to a news website, whatever it might be, BBC News or whatever, and you go to press on a link to a story that you're interested in, and this happens to me quite a bit, I go to press on that link, but a different page loads because it was actually moving around on the mobile screen, and you go, man, got to go back now, back up, wait for the page to kind of settle down, stop kind of fidgeting and moving, and now I can press the correct link. So Google regards this as poor user experience. And on certain templates, different parts of the theme are loading at different speeds, and there are other different elements in the page that have not been well conceived or executed, and it creates this kind of sort of shuddering effect on your phone, and you just can't quite get the right link that quickly. So the movement of the screen itself, the page, we've got the input, into a form field like into google.com or YouTube, for example, searching for funny cat videos, which are awesome, by the way, totally time well spent, or that original first contentful paint. So those are the three elements. But actually, like I wrote in my blog article on WPX, further down that results page, the tool just spits out a whole load of other corrections that you could consider making to the page. And I've got to tell you, it's like super technical overload, and not too many solopreneurs or web entrepreneurs will be tackling that. It's just too heavy. Even google.com, which I notice now because I tested it just before this call, Google Page Speed Insights does not allow you to test google.com in this tool, but I tested it back in May, and it just spat out like this long list of all the things wrong with this simple page. There's a logo and one field, and Google needs to go and fix all that stuff in theory. So those are the kind of the three big areas of core web vitals. So I think the question then becomes, what exactly can we do about it? You definitely do need GDPR pop-ups, Aaron, unless you like the idea of being sued. But if you like courtroom action, dude, knock yourself out. I think you definitely need that, for European countries. So if we look, what are the easy fixes? Now, when you look at what Google recommends, even on google.com, fixes there, that's a web developer. That's like an experienced web developer guy to go in and even tackle all of that stuff. But even without that, you should be able to get a pretty decent score just with a few relatively simple tweaks. So I mentioned image optimization. So I'm still, my dog's getting restless. You can hear her barking there. They're in the office here. We're dog friendly. One of my little tricks that I use, because I also work quite a lot on our dog foundation site at everydogmatters.eu, and I'm often putting up pictures of dogs or even cats that we've rescued there, or our sanctuary facility. So what I do there is I will resize the picture in paint.net, which is free, very easy to use. It's very quick to learn. Not Microsoft Paint. Let's not confuse it with that horrible thing. But in paint.net. Bill has asked, should our clients avoid pop-ups altogether? I think it depends on your business model, Bill. And if it's working for you, like having an exit pop, I think is far less problematic. But if when you arrive at a page, you're hit with a few pop-ups already, that can be problematic. It should be really exactly. So Aaron has said our exit pop-up is a huge generator of leads. We use one WPX on our shopping cart, on our checkout process. An exit pop I think is absolutely fine, because it's after all that action of the original page is loaded. Rita, sorry, dog trouble. So what I do with the dog images at Every Dog Matters is I put the image into Paint. I make it a JPEG. JPEG is a very, very good, efficient file format. WebP is coming to WordPress in the next version, 5.8, which I think will be out very early July. So WebP is a Google format that's has way smaller file sizes than JPEG. But for now, I'm using JPEG because WebP is not native in WordPress, but it will be in the next version. So I changed the format to JPEG and I save it at 50% quality. And to the human eye, you cannot pick the difference. And suddenly an image that was like 2 meg goes down to like 47 kilobytes or something like that. Looks exactly the same. I set it to the exact width of the column, which Google also likes, these image attributes of height and width. So that's a very, very easy kind of free fix. And I prefer that when I'm building a page to, say, using a image compression plugin, which to me is a little bit of a lazy, it's not the best practice there. And you're just kind of adding extra load to your site, when just optimizing the image in the first place kind of does the same thing, but I think in a more efficient way. So you should have that going. You should be using a caching plugin. The one that we recommend while we build our own is W3 Total Cache, but there are others out there. You've got WP Rocket, for example. NitroPack is a more expensive option, and it's very, very heavy on the server, the way that they've done that, but it does achieve good results. So we're using here, as I said, W3 Total Cache. And some people kind of view caching as cheating, but I don't see the need for the server to have to rebuild a page completely that's very popular, that was just served 10 minutes ago to somebody in New Zealand. And now somebody from New York is accessing the same page, and you ask the server to rebuild the page all over again. It's a bit slower, it's heavier on the server, and with a good caching plugin set up, it just loads off the cache, and it's much, much quicker. So be careful of those entry pop-ups. Don't go crazy with those. Exit pop-ups, as I said, I think they're fine because it's after the whole page is loaded. But remember, you can test any of this on the lab data there on the Google PageSpeed Insights. So you put the pop-up on, you reload the page, so you're checking it's there, and then you just run it through the testing facility again. And you can see if it's having a really, really negative impact there as well. I think also, yep.
Yeah, I just said that's awesome. And one other thing, like, we're playing around with a few caching plugins, but I think one of the challenges we have with W3 specifically, I think, is it consolidates, not consolidates. It crashes a bit with Ezoic as example.
Yeah.
And we use Ezoic for quite a few of our monetization sites. So in some cases, some plugins are good in some cases and not in others, and so on. So I think we're probably using 3 different ones on different sites for different reasons, etc.
We've had quite a bit of trouble with Ezoic over the years. I think the current version is probably the best now. They've had it for a long time, but it did give us quite a bit of trouble there for a while. Hopefully it's going okay on WPX at the moment, Mads.
It's going great, but we just need to use a different. We can't use W3 with it, so we need to uninstall that before hooking up to Zoic. But it's generally loading well and speed is good. All that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And things like WooCommerce, is very server heavy, and that can't do a lot of caching, or particularly on the front end for customers, and that's a lot server heavier. And if you've got a big e-commerce store, you're probably better off looking at something like a dedicated server solution. And I've had software tools in the past where one was an expired domain tool, and I was renting 20 dedicated servers running that thing, 24/7. Crazy days. It's for another time. Bill, in case you can't see, Bill has said, what software do you use to reduce image sizes, JPEGs? We've been using freeconverter.com. There are ones like Smushit. I think it's WP Smushit is one of the ones out there. If you Google it, you'll find them. My preferred practice, because our pages typically don't have that many images, and if you're creating them from you might put 2 or 3 or 5 images in there. I prefer to just do it in paint.net and get that file size really small down with 50% quality setting. It may be, depending on the quality, the type of photograph you're using, that there is a tiny impact on quality, and you might try going back to full quality and resaving at 60% or 70% quality, which still hugely reduces the file size. But typically, from what I've seen, and a lot of the photos I work with are dogs outside, you just cannot detect any picture quality, but the file size is tiny. And when WebP comes along, which I think now is supported in Safari browser, I'm not 100% sure on that, I'd need to check. But the others, I think it'll be there on Edge, and obviously definitely on Chrome, because WebP is a Google product. I think there are even other more image formats coming along that are even smaller than that. So you can use an image compressor, particularly if you already have a really big site and you never did optimization at the beginning when you were creating those pages. And you might have a site now that's got like 500 pages and 3,000 images. So you probably are looking for an image compression option, on those ones. Yep.
We're typically on the lazy side. So particularly when we're dealing with larger sites, like we build a lot of affiliate sites and so on, where we're publishing maybe 1 to 3 pieces of content every single day, and we definitely find the plugins a lot simpler and more time saving, and just the simplicity of it, right? So we typically use the what's it called? Short Pixel, I think is our preferred one. But
I think that's a paid one, Mads.
It is usually, I mean, it's very.
You might have you've got a certain free quota each month, and then above that, you might need to pay for each image served.
We actually were in a position. No, it's not served, but basically for each image that it converts, you get some credits. But we got a lifetime deal, like quite a while back, so we basically get like 20,000 images per month or something. So
sounds like a Sumo special.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But Short Pixel, I've worked a lot with Brendan Tully. He usually look after a bunch of our sites with speed optimization and stuff, and it's I think he was the one I got the recommendation from initially.
Yep, exactly. Another thing, just on a troubleshooting point of view, if you're seeing some funny behavior on one of your sites, just see it like in your, let's say, for example, Mads, I'll use you, as my scapegoat here, that's not the right word, as my test case. So let's say Mads one day, he notices something funny on one of his sites, funny error, something not working, either in the back end or the front end. A good thing to do is just go and check your other sites on the same hosting on the same server. And if they're not displaying that error, it can be that there could be a potential software conflict on that troublesome site, or it could be that there's a plugin that does not agree with the PHP version or the WordPress version on the main site that's causing a problem. And it's just a quick way to troubleshoot. And I do that quite often with an empty WordPress default installation. So if a customer is experiencing a problem, I'll go into their account with their permission. Didn't do it without it. I'll just create an empty default WordPress installation and just see how that performs compared to the problematic site. For instance, the record case we've ever dealt with at WPX, we had a customer once who had 200 plugins on a WordPress site, 200. And we routinely see sites with 50 or 60 plugins. And to me, one of the ironies of that is that those guys who own those are not using almost any of those plugins anymore. So they thought it would be cool to test it out, which is fine and good. But if you kind of want to do that audit once in a while and just delete, disable and delete WordPress plugins that you're not using, because that's just adding heft and weight, to the site that's probably unnecessary. They're not even being used. So they're just good kind of troubleshooting hacks to work with. I think the thing with Core Web Vitals, just to come back to that, it's kind of a newish thing for Google, and I expected glad to help, Bill. All good. And I think we're going to see it evolve, just like Google's algorithm. We're going to see it evolve quite a lot over coming years, and they'll be tweaking this and tweaking that. And I think a good way to stay in touch with those changes is to just join relevant good Facebook groups. They've kind of replaced the forums that I used to have. I used to have a couple of forums and like Warrior Forum, that sort of thing. And I think in Facebook groups, you can get really up-to-date information, and you can just share what different members of that group are seeing. They've changed this, or there was this announcement, or the John Mueller interview from Google, though generally I find those just kind of PR and a little bit of a waste of time, from my perspective. So I highly recommend being in Facebook groups, and I think don't necessarily optimize today, whatever it is, June 29th, and assume that that's like that forever. Google, I think, will evolve and probably pretty regularly be changing aspects of Core Web Vitals. And it's just, unfortunately, yet another one of those things that we just have to be mindful of as entrepreneurs on the web. One final point I will add for the deeper technical stuff, you can go to services like WP Speedup. I think it would be wpspeedup.com. It's not that cheap. So we do free speed optimizations at WPX. The first time around, we do charge for subsequent optimizations on the same website. But typically, you can go out and hire experts to actually do that for you. If you're pretty happy with your website in terms of the conversion and the leads that you're generating, like guys talked about today, but you're not happy with the score, the Core Web Vitals. So it makes sense to just hire those guys to go in, do a proper speed optimization, and improve it a lot.
Yeah, that's So this one of the things that I focus a lot on is from a business perspective, right? And I think one of the big issue many SEOs have is they try and be an expert at everything. They want to understand everything and so on. And I'm a little bit the opposite. I like just hiring people that are really good at one thing. And speed optimization is one of these things that, unless you are a developer yourself, like hiring a developer or even training a developer to become extremely good at speed optimization, it's going to take a really, really long time, right? So that's why, I normally use Brendan Tully and WP Speed Fix, and pay them a couple of $100 every time we have a bigger site that needs a bit of love and care, and much better. Then we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to think about it. We just pay an expert for what they do, and then we move on. So I really like that approach, and I mean, a lot of the time, like for for me when building businesses. That's the kind of mindset that you want to understand what you need to own and what you need to be really good at, and then for the rest of it is, pay the experts at what they're great at. So that's typically what I do. So we don't really have any super experts on board in terms of something like that.
Yep, exactly. And for me, my personal opinion, feel free to differ, Mads, is that as business owner, that is not where your time is best spent. So your time is much better spent on, for example, refining your offer to your target audience, testing different offers, getting feedback from your target audience about new opportunities like spin-off products or feature improvements, or even removing features that they're not using, they don't want, that get in the way. All of those things that impact the financial health and the general health of the business. That's where I think a business owner's focus needs to be, and on the vision, on the strategy, and that opportunity spotting. And one of the reasons, I'll just kind of very briefly mention, one of the biggest turning points in the whole history of WPX, so we've been going about 7.5 years. I think we introduced this maybe about 5 or so years ago. Something in hosting that always bugged me, that I never understood, and it was kind of unique to the hosting industry, was that, let's just say that I'm a surfing blogger from Sydney, Australia, for instance. I am from Australia, but not a surfer, unfortunately. Damn it, missed my calling. So if I'm a surfing blogger from Sydney, Australia, and my website falls over and goes horribly wrong, goes offline, and then I go to a hosting company, Bluehost or whoever, and I say to them, dude, my site's gone offline, what should I do? They have a look, and then they send you a very long technical article about something, DNS propagation. I'm a surfer. I don't know what DNS is. I don't know what propagation is. I don't have a clue about any of that. And the hosting industry normal practice was just to send a knowledge base article, which is very technical. Being a surfer, for instance, I now have to read through the article, try to understand it, try to find a solution, and then apply it. So, as I say, about 5 years ago, we dumped that practice. Customers who want a knowledge base article, we send them a link if they want it, but our first point of call is just to fix the website for them. We do that for free. We call it our fixed for you guarantee. If a site goes offline, we just step in and fix it, because our guys are very experienced. They see the problem very quickly. Within 1 or 2 minutes, they go in there and the site is back online. And when you look at our reviews online, like at Trustpilot or YouTube or on Facebook, for example, this is the one thing that was a total game changer for WPX. And it's the one thing that our customers, out of all the things we do, it's the one thing they love the most, is that willingness to step in and just fix the problem for them. And I think when I see things like the Core Web Vitals issue coming up and all the recommendations and the heavy technical jargon and language there, I just think, like, it's just like, this is not a real word, but it like undemocratizes what the web has got to. Because now it's become much more specialized, and if you don't know any of that stuff, that's a barrier for people going online with a blog, not even for business, but it might just be a hobby blog or a charity blog or whatever. So I didn't like it, that side of it, and I think it's unnecessarily complex, the language they use there, and it, from that perspective of democratizing the web more and opening up more access, I didn't like it. I thought it's a big step backwards.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think, I mean, in fairness, you didn't have a lot of competition to blow everyone else out of the water, because my experience, exactly as you said, pretty much all the hosting I used to use would have been absolutely horrible, right? And again, I'm like you, I'm a business guy, I'm not a developer. I sometimes hire developers and stuff, but very often, like, even communicating what you're trying to do with a developer and getting them on the right page and so on, and helping them understand the challenge is difficult. So in the end of the day, it makes such a big difference to actually have a host that's super helpful. And I mean, I'm probably abusing the support, I guess, but
Shame on you, Mads. Shame on you, man. I'll check on that after the call.
we're definitely writing, I would say, at least once a month with something, right? I mean, we host lots of sites, but there's always something, some kind of DNS issue, or there's stuff happening once in a while, and it's just so nice getting an actual solution, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very few times where we mess up a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but very few times that WPX haven't been able to help, as an example, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, like, in fairness, I know a lot of developer guys that maybe prefer other hosting, and I totally get it. But as a non-developer, nothing comes close to what VPX offers, in my opinion.
And the thing in hosting is a lot of software has to get along well for everything to work okay. Countless systems. It's crazy how many systems have to get along. But when we first started at the very beginning, we just kind of copied. I've been using hosting since maybe 1998. Always horrible, terrible experience. That's why I created it in 2013. But even then, at the beginning, we just copied everybody else with their technical language and technical features, SSD, SSH, all of these things. And actually, couple of years later, maybe it's terrible to admit, we started really talking to our customers. They didn't understand or care about any of that stuff. They just wanted the outcome, which is to have have the business running, not have to worry about too much technical stuff. There are other companies that are perfect for people who are techies. Go into Amazon Web Services. If you need a computer science degree to work in that admin panel, that's crazy. I've used it quite a lot, or people working for me on other software projects. And over the years, I've developed quite a few software tools. I can't write a line of code. I don't know anything about computer languages, but I knew the outcome that I wanted from a certain tool. And I think WordPress is also like that. I mean, I was talking to Kevin Ohashi from Review Signal the other day on an interview. It's on our blog now. And we were talking about the future of WordPress. And I said, for me, and maybe this sounds quite mercenary, it's actually a tool that delivers an outcome that I want. So like with the Dog Foundation, we need to tell our stories about abused dogs and try to get them rehomed and all of that. And if WordPress isn't the right tool, we would just find a different tool, to do that. So it's really about the outcome that you want, not necessarily getting bogged down in the technicalities. And again, I think Core Web Vitals is a real black hole sucking people into that kind of technology hole.
Definitely.
Bill has asked, we host our sites in a VPS with GoDaddy. What do you hear about GoDaddy hosting? They're located in Arizona and our sites are in Ohio. How much does geography affect hosting? I do have a clear opinion about GoDaddy, which might get me sued. But if you go to somewhere like Trustpilot, you can have a look at what some of the negative press about them is like. Just on the location though, Bill, I think what is important, if you're dealing with a more spread out audience, and it could be that your niche is worldwide, if you're doing it for a local pizza store, it doesn't matter. But if you've got like a global audience, what you do need is a content delivery network, a CDN. So what this means is, let's just say they're located in Arizona. So maybe you're in Ohio, Bill, for example, and that's, but you might also be trying to attract customers from Japan or maybe Russia or Scandinavia, something like that. So what you want when people visit your site from those places is that the site loads from a nearby location. It could be in Germany, for example, or even the same city. We have 26 endpoints. It's about to go to 40 in our CDN, which we built ourselves. So I think if you have that global audience, you want to make sure you've got a content delivery network. You can get third-party services like StackPath or KeyCDN. We have our own. It's free for all WPX customers. And this will hugely speed up how quickly your site loads, because it doesn't have to go all the way around the world to where the origin server is hosted. So highly recommend that if you're not using it already.
Yeah, I would say I'm very happy that it's becoming a pretty regular thing that more and more hosts have CDNs, right? Because like the server location used to be a really big thing, but obviously with CDNs in the last couple of years, that that's becoming a lot better, right?
Yeah,
So,
one of our future innovations, Bill has shared his experience with HostGator. I know exactly what they're like. Um, yeah, all too well. That's why I created WPX, Bill, to be honest. One of the things we're aiming for, don't quote me on this, because the techno guys will get very angry with me. But one of the things we hope to do in the future is to make our whole CDN network, they're all origin server locations. So if, for example, you're in New Zealand, you can use our CDN endpoint in New Zealand as your origin server location. At the moment, it doesn't quite work like that with any host so much. You have to kind of choose a specific city for that, and that lacks flexibility, I think. So in the future, we hope to have a whole CDN network, 40 plus, points around the world. You can choose any one, and again, if you're choosing like for a local business, plumber, lawyer, whatever, you just choose your city, and the site will just load, instantly. Should do if you're on a decent server. Yep.
yeah. Excellent.
So,
Right, Terry, I think I'll just go ahead here and share. So you've been so kind to give us a discount code for all the guys. So basically, okay, it doesn't look as great when I share it up on the screen, but basically the discount code is SEO Mastery Business, SEO Mastery Professional, and SEO Mastery Elite. And that basically means that they can sign up for any of your hostings for just $1 for the first month. And,
yep. So the thing that's different about those, the business is for up to 5 websites, professionals up to 15, elite is up to 35 websites. So you can try it out for a month. It doesn't need to be your main money site. It could just be one of your less important sites or a new site. Test it out, see how fast we respond to support questions, and also how well we respond. We know from Live Chat Inc., which is independent software company we use, we average about 25 seconds on live chat. It's our main focus on support, and people say often they go on, it's 5 seconds or 10 seconds. So it's very, very quick. But to me, that is not as important if the support dialogue is not well handled. So you can be as fast as you want in the world, but if it's horrible, the answer you get, it's like a chat bot. Yes, it answers quickly, but it kind of talks nonsense. So we do pride ourselves on the quality of support. We train a lot on it. And we also try to have the agent who is the first responder, if I can put it that way, is kind of the manager of your issue. So they're not endlessly escalating it to other people in other buildings somewhere and you go into a queue. So we try to have that first person handle the problem for you.
Yeah, totally. And I have to say, one of my favorites with WPX, so I love buying and selling sites and all this good stuff. And you guys are always amazingly good at always moving sites and stuff. I used to have a developer literally just to move sites back and forward from all sorts of different hosts. And the fact that you guys do that and make sure it works, and like we were sometimes bought site that was a virus or were hacked, and you guys have kind of fixed up all the problems. So that's definitely taken a load off my shoulders. So
sure, we do that for free. It's unlimited, and the only time we do charge for a migration is if the domain changes. So if it went from madsblog.com to madsawesomeblog.com, this requires a lot of additional database editing and checking, verification work. So we do charge for that. But a normal migration, we never charge for that at all. And usually we do it within 24 hours.
Yep.
That
was a great idea for me, getting a new domain there, Terry.
Sorry?
It was a good idea for me getting a new domain there. Matt's
there you go.
Blog. Yeah.
I'll sue you later for royalties, Matt. We've got the video evidence.
Yep. Thank you very much. So, Bill saying this might be the most helpful webinar I've ever attended.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Webinars, so I'm glad this one was a good one for you.
It's always difficult to drag Terry out of his Bulgarian hiding, but we've managed a few times. So also an amazing presentation at the last SEO Summit. So, excellent. Yeah, but thank you very, very much, Terry.
My pleasure.
awesome talking with you, and
Sure.
yeah, good
Thank
to
you,
go
guys. Good luck.
through some of
Good luck
this
with the
difficult
projects.
stuff.
Yep. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Scott.